Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today's webinar. My name is Melissa Stept, and I'm the Marcom Manager here at CardioLog Analytics. We're going to be talking today about productivity and collaboration in Office 365, and I'm happy to announce that I have Gokan Oz here with me, who is a Microsoft MVP, and he's an expert on the subject, so I'm sure today we'll learn a lot that we can take away from this webinar. So first, a bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. So if you want to share this with a colleague, we're going to be sending an email with the recording after today's session. And of course, if you have any questions, please send them through the chat box within the GoToWebinar panel. We'll leave some time towards the end for a Q&A. You can also connect with us on Twitter with the Twitter handle @CardioLog. And if you'd like to tweet Gokan, you can reach him at xgokan. In regards to the agenda for today's webinar, we'll start out with a very short introduction. Then Gokan will discuss productivity and collaboration in Office 365. I'll do a quick presentation to show how our analytics and engagement tools can help you boost productivity. And then we'll leave some time at the end for a Q&A. So just a brief introduction. CardioLog Analytics has been around for about 14 years now, since 2005, and we're based out of Boston. Over the past 14 years, we've been focused on web analytics designed for SharePoint and now Office 365. Our flagship solution is CardioLog Analytics, and it's built specifically for internal platforms, including all versions of SharePoint up to 2016, as well as SharePoint Online and Office 365. We also track third-party tools like Yammer, Citrion, and CRM tools. Our solution is available both on-prem and as a SaaS version based on Power BI. We also have a new engagement tool that allows you to design and send campaigns to better target your users. And now I'm going to hand it off to Gokan. He'll introduce himself and then jump into the presentation.
So thank you so much for the introduction, Melissa. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
That's great. So welcome everybody, welcome. Guten Tag, Guten Morgen, Salam from every country, from the east to the west, from the north to the south. Welcome to this webinar. I'm extremely honored and proud to present this session with CardioLog today because we're going to see a lot of Office 365 on how to be productive, what's good actually, and how you can be productive with Office 365, but also what's bad in Office 365 and what actually remains you on being productive. But before the webinar, let me introduce myself. My name is Gokan Ozfici, or Gokan Oz, for those who can't spell it correctly. I'm from Belgium, Brussels, Belgium. It's one of the smallest countries in the world, if not the smallest one. I'm an independent consultant, my own company, which is called Neoxy. I'm a Microsoft Regional Director, as an MVP as well. My Twitter handle, as mentioned, is xgokan, and I've been several times an influencer in the SharePoint area. That's all for me. Let's go straight to the presentation. So Office 365, we can define, and if you ask and raise the question to everybody what Office 365 is, clearly today in the industry, many of us have many definitions for Office 365. And this is typically my definition of Office 365. It's the union of people, processes, and services and applications, hopefully enterprise grade, to enable continuous delivery and value to empower every person. This is the definition as it stands today for me of Office 365. And many of us, coming from the SharePoint topologies, coming from the SharePoint era, building hybrid environments, or just moving from legacy environments to SharePoint, we have to use Office 365. We have to learn, adapt, and fall and grow with Office 365. And I don't know how many of yours will remember this was the first wheel of Office 365 years ago. We had like the first wheel, which was something like that. We had the site, communication, content, search, insight, and composites from the SharePoint era. Like this was SharePoint 2010, 27, 2013. Call it whatever you want to call it. But this wheel was the first wheel of Office 365, where you had the Office 365 sites, you had the Yammer groups, OneDrive, the Oslo, which is like Delft today, Power BI, and apps. All of these were the first baby steps of Office 365. Then we got this wheel, right? Office 365 growed up. We had a lot of more in Office 365, like coming from only that wheel to this wheel with Dynamics 365, Visio, Flow, Stream, Teams, and way much more. Like this is Office 365 today, and we only do get more and more in the cloud era. So how should you define your key activities in Office 365 to be productive? First of all, your personal productivity. I need to be able to be, what we say, like make stuff done. This is your personal productivity. Then I need to be collaborate. I need to find the perfect matching tool to collaborate in Office 365. I need business applications. I need mobile applications. I need a place where I can store, share, and find documents as metadata. And I need to be able to communicate with others into the organization within Office 365. Those are my key pillars, key activity pillars in Office 365 to be productive. If your application is not mobile ready or mobile, well, then you can't be 100% productive. If you don't have business applications running in Office 365 on SharePoint on top of XYZ, then you can't be that productive. If you can't communicate properly, then you can't be productive. And all of those 6 pillars are really, really important for you in your organization for your productivity. Let's go deep dive in those 6 pillars. I mentioned like the sharing, storing, and collaborating. Well, this can be done with SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business. Matches perfectly. You need to find stuff, as I mentioned. Well, you have the graph, you have the new search coming in Office 365. You have Delve, right? Mentioned about enterprise grade applications, Power Apps, Flow, Staff Hub, matches perfectly in Office 365. The communication you have today, what Microsoft really focuses on is Microsoft Teams, Yammer, and Skype for Business. Even SharePoint communication sites is a great way on communicate with your teams. The mobility, it's perfectly matching with the iPhone and Android tablets and apps, even on the Surface Hubs. And personal productivity, like you can check if you're good enough, if you don't spend a lot of time on emails and writing on meetings and writing emails, you have your personal analytics, the planner, and SharePoint insights. Whenever I check the 6 pillars I mentioned to you for being productive in Office 365, well, they fit perfectly in Office 365. From SharePoint to OneDrive, from Graph to Delve, from Power Apps to Planner and SharePoint Insights. So Office 365 is a great place to be productive. But the thing with Office 365 is it has good and bad things at the same time. So let's have a look on the strengths of Office 365 today in being productive. Whenever we add a new service, many stacks are provisioned for you. You don't need to wait for legacy on premises to create a user mailbox as an example, or a SharePoint site. Your productivity is by default raised. Today, whenever a user is hired or an employee is hired and you have to create a new user for him or a new mailbox or just giving access to a SharePoint site, it can take up to weeks before that thing is done. In Office 365, you just create your user, assign the licenses, and behind the screen, everything for you is done. This is being productive. So this is really cool. The provisioning engine behind Office 365 is marvelous. The automation, whenever you create XYZ, Office 365 will trigger the provisioning engine and create ABC for you. A wonderful example is groups. Whenever you create a SharePoint Online, it will create a power plan, a planner plan, or a shared mailbox, etc., for you. So the automation engine behind Office 365 is one of the strengths of Office 365. The extensibility of Office 365 is awesome as well. Many of us who never use Office 365 or just do job protection and don't want to have a hybrid model or just don't want to move some apps to Office 365 will say, I can't have customization in Office 365 in SharePoint, which is so false, because with the SharePoint framework or the bot framework, you can create any customization that you want, respecting the guidelines of Microsoft. Diversity, you always have more than one tool for everything. From collaboration to messaging to tasks. Like, how many of yours know how many tools we have for tasks? More than 6. Outlook tasks, SharePoint tasks, Wunderlist tasks, to-do tasks, planner tasks, etc. A lot of tools for doing one stuff. This is amazing in Office 365. Another one is the next generation technology. You always get the latest technology ever in Office 365, which was never the case in an on-premises environment, because it all depends on IT. IT decides when they want to patch the environment, when they want to have a feature pack, when they want to have a cumulative update. And then you maybe will get a new feature, which is not the case today. If Microsoft deploys a new feature, a new solution, a new functionality, well, you will get it, which is so great in Office 365. And the two last options are the manageability and the cloud offerings. Being able to handle operations even outside your network perimeter has no price. You can go on vacation, being in Hawaii, you have to respond to an email, you have maybe even administrator work, creating sites. If you don't have a site provisioning engine that you have built, you can just log into your SharePoint and create sites, even connect to the admin center and modify stuff in the SharePoint admin center. You just need a browser and internet connection, and that's it. The cloud offerings, getting 1 terabyte for OneDrive for Business, or even getting 20 times the SharePoint storage per user is great, because nobody in your on-premises environment will give you so much of data just for you, which Office 365 definitely does. So these are, in a few lines, the great stuff of Office 365. You also have the bad part of Office 365, or let's call it the weaknesses of Office 365. The first biggest issue I see on being productive is the insights around deprecated features. And let me give you 2 examples. Like, you have the site mailbox or the access services. Both of them have been deprecated and even removed from Office 365, which is all okay. I do agree with that. But the thing is, the announcement has been done in January for the site mailbox, and the execution was done in March. And whenever I say January 2017, it's not like the 1st of January, but it was like the 31st of January 2017, and the execution was done early March. So you only have 1 month to find a solution, to implement a solution, to adopt your users to use that solution, and to write documentation and make the handover to your help desk and make procedures around that, which sometimes can be very difficult. Only 1 month is not enough. Another example was the access services. The announcement was done in April 2017 and the execution in June 2017. You only get 1 or 2 months to find the solution, replace, and implement that solution. This can be problematic for you because maybe you love that tool, you wanted to use that tool, now it's gone. Lack on governance is also something that is not that good in Office 365, because we know that every Microsoft Teams team will create a group, and that group will create a SharePoint and a planner plan. But not every group will create a team, right? So you can go from left to the right, but from right to left doesn't work. So it can get complicated in creating a real governance around that features, which will definitely have an impact on your productivity. Another one is the size of mobile apps, which is that bad, and the technical documentation in Office 365. You don't always find the documentation that you need on how some stuff works. Also, one of the biggest issue I see today in Office 365 is the lack in progress in some stacks. I'm not saying like they don't do their job. Microsoft is doing a great job in releasing a lot of stuff in SharePoint, in OneDrive, and in Teams. But some stacks, like the Planner and Sway, which I really love to use because I can make beautiful presentations with Sway, and I'm using Planner every single day with my employees to define the vacation or their holiday, their sicknesses, etc., which is so cool. But it has been like ages they've been doing some new functionalities and features in that stacks. And like Yammer, Microsoft, the Yammer team needed like 3 years to implement the edit option into posts in Yammer, which can sound crazy, right? Like they needed 3 years in implementing that stuff. And editing a post shouldn't be that difficult from people coming from the news feed from SharePoint, people coming from even from Facebook, adding a post, not being able to modify it. This is so frustrating for end users that at the end of the day, whenever you made a Yammer post and you cannot delete it, or you can delete it but you cannot edit it, well, you're not productive. You're just feeling not good, right? Um, and also, you have lack in progress, but you also have slow progress in some stacks. Like external sharing in Microsoft Teams was one of the highest demanded feature ever, and Microsoft needed like, if I'm not wrong, 6 months to implement only first Azure users and then open it to everybody. If you want to be productive, we all say like fail fast, grow up fast, and do something new fast. Well, that's not the way. That's really not the way. So always be careful with that stacks in Office 365. Another one is the auto create groups, which is still not that optimal. As I mentioned, every team will create a group, but not every group will create a team. I'm going to deep dive in it. In my humble opinion, I would love to see that kind of information architecture. Every Office 365 group that you create will first trigger the creation of a hub site, right? And not only a team site. From that hub site, there will be another automated trigger, which will create a team site and a communication site. Take the example that you want to create a project group, which is called migration of search group. And you will have a hub site, which will called migration search, a team site for the migration search, and a communication site for the search. So the IT could work on team side, collaborating internally, and every communication to the business could be done through the communication side. So great organized, so well organized, which will raise your productivity, but it's still not that optimal. Modern sites, we love talking about modern. Every new feature in Office 365 is called modern, but not everything is that modern in Office 365. This is a list of what everything is not modern in Office 365. You can see the unsupported customizations like custom master pages, changing modern site, use classic, custom page layouts, classic publishing features, etc., etc. I have put the link at the bottom. You can always see and check what's supported and what's not supported in customizations in Office 365, but it's so frustrating from an end user perspective, from people coming from the on-premises era, being able to do everything to a world of being limited of doing everything. It can create frustrations and bring down your productivity. So it's up to you as an IT pro, as a developer, to try to keep up the good customizations in Office 365 and build the perfect Office 365 site. Another one which is actually not that good at all is the confusing management user interface. Like today, every root site collection has the modern template. The subsites, unfortunately, has the classic one. This is so bad because Today the mentality has changed. We always say hub before sub, use hub sites than rather than the sub sites. But not everybody is therefore ready. We have organizations having hundreds of sub sites in a site collection. And this is actually, whenever you try to change all the information architecture, and if you don't do, and if you are not good enough to bring the perfect information architecture, and even not perfect, a good information architecture, well, you will frustrate your users because they know their stuff, they know how to work, they have been working for ages with subsites, and now everything is under one root site collection. If you don't train them, if you don't give them the correct explanation, well, productivity is going down. There is no PowerShell support or API support for several stacks, so you can't create the necessary um, engines behind Office 365 to make things happen very fast. Like as an example, there are 800 PowerShell commandlets on premises and only 40 commandlets in online, which is fair enough, which is okay because we don't have everything in online. But in some cases, like the get SP site or get SPO site, which is the same, like I just want to get information from my site. In on premises, it gives different functions and methods. In online, it gives different functions and methods, different results. So every engine, every provisioning script you have written for making your users happy, for having a better productivity in Office 365, well, you have to review them all because it's not that easy. And hybrid is not that easy as you want to see it because many people around the corner will just say, oh, if you can't go online, just go hybrid because it's next finish. Well, it's not the case. You still have servers to manage, network to manage, certificates to manage, and a lot of SharePoint stuff to manage for getting things done. So it's not that easy. A few others is a roadmap. I don't know you as a CTO, but how many of ours like to see changing roadmaps? My CTO doesn't like it. Whenever my CTO invests money in a tool, in a product, in a license, he wants to know, okay, I've bought for 1 million SharePoint today. What happens in 10 years? He wants to see that because it has a certain cost. In Office 365, unfortunately, as features are deprecating, coming, removing, it is not that easy to build roadmaps. Even governance, it's not that easy. Today, whenever a user has an issue, he calls the help desk. Let's take a stupid example, password reset, right? He calls the help desk, he says, hey, I'm sorry, I can't log in. Could you please reset my password? Help desk tries. If help desk can resolve the issue, case closed. If he can't resolve the issue is raised to the first tier, which is like maybe the operational team. If the operational team can't handle the issue, it is raised to the project team. Maybe they have to implement a CU, a feature pack, upgrade SharePoint, upgrade Exchange, any reason, anything that can happen. And then they open an incident at Microsoft, they install something on SharePoint, they patch the environment, and then the ticket is closed. But what if you move several stacks in Office 365? Do you still need the help desk, the first line, the second line, the project tier, the operational tier? All of these should be reviewed. That's not that easy at all. And definitely this one, if Office 365 has an issue? I'm not saying like we never had that kind of issues, but not being able to connect through Azure AD, we already had a few times that issue that Azure AD people could not log in, right? Or even internal issues, like if you have a network issue in your organization, in your country, your ISP has an issue. What if your stack has been moved completely Office 365? All those kind of stuff will drop down your productivity. And definitely this one for administrators is a big issue. Not being able to access issues, incidents, errors in the backend, and not being able to figure stuff out is actually a drop down in your productivity. So the conclusion of all of this is doing the same over and over again and expecting something different is nonsense. From an on-premises era, you may build the perfect SharePoint environment. You may build a great digital workplace with Yammer web parts, with anything on premises. Um, it won't help because all the new features being done by Microsoft are first coming in Office 365. Installing more servers, patching those servers, installing service packs, cumulative updates, feature packs, all of them will not help because people, the end users, your business wants things now and they want to use all of those new functionalities now because we are in a services era. Like we all are using Facebook, it's a service. We are all using Uber, it's a service. We are all watching movies on Netflix, it's a service. And whenever you're doing all that kind of stuff outside of your job using services, you want to have that kind of service also in your job. And Office 365 is the perfect example of a service that you want to use. So the definition of this would be this wonderful quote. Today's companies can't use 90th, 30th organizational structure with 20th century management and technology to do 21st century work. So you can't use a SharePoint 2013 server to do today's tasks with the technology you have today. You have to move and move forward. And here are my top 10 coolest features that I really, really want you guys to use in Office 365. It could be a greenfield project, like you never used Office 365 and you want to go on Office 365. Or it can also be an existing environment where you say, okay, let's use that then tools. The first one would be Microsoft Flow. Microsoft Flow, also called the workflow engine behind Office 365, which actually will help you building a bridge between and across applications. Let's take an example. If someone fills out a form in SharePoint, you could trigger a flow to create a new lead in Dynamics 365. You have a lot of predefined templates in Flow. You can, like I have put a few examples here. This is an example of a flow. When an item in a SharePoint list is modified, send an email. So this is a flow that you can build and bring in Office 365. On a certain list, when an item is modified, you can send an email. And you can see that this template has been made by Microsoft and used more than 2,000 times. And you have a lot of flows that you can use in Office 365 to raise your productivity. Take the example that you are doing a manual job, like creating a new list item, from that item uploading a document. Whenever that document has been uploaded, sending an email, creating a new lead in Dynamics 365, and then exporting this to PDF and printing that lead, right? This can be time consuming. With Flow, you can do it just once, and whenever you create an item in your list, all the rest will be done for you with Flow, which is so great. Two things I want to add with Flow is you are not only limited to the microservices, you can also grab information from Facebook, even drop items into Dropbox. And secondly, you can even connect Flow and Power Apps with the gateways into your on-premises environment. So you can even consume data from on-premises. So if you're in a hybrid world and you say like, okay, I'm gonna build a bridge between my on-premises and my online, I can use the gateway to get the data from on-premises and consume it in online. Secondly is the forms. Um, Coming from a SharePoint world, and I know many of yours are also coming from a SharePoint world, we have been searching for the ultimate tool for forms. We had the InfoPath, we had many other stuff that even like an MVP has created. Mark Rockley has created his own forms on SharePoint. Today we have Microsoft Forms. A very, very basic example is you want to find out how many people want pizza for Friday. It's a bad example, but it's really funny. You can do a Microsoft Forms. You can just create a form, ask for people to fill in that form, and you get responses in real time. You can see how if the form is active, how the average time to complete the form, how many responses you had, and you can even get a chart to see who responded for what. The good thing with that is you can send that out up to 5,000 people, which makes like a lot of pizza to order, right? My analytics is also one of my favorite ones to see if you're productive enough or not and adapt yourself with that. My analytics is the AI behind Office 365, which will analyze what you are doing. Like how many time did you spend on meetings? How many time did you send on email? Writing email, reading email. How many focus hours you had? How many time you really worked? And how many times you worked after hours are a few examples, a summary of yours. Um, you can set goals, like you can say, okay, I want to have less than 20 hours of meetings. You can edit your goal and you can see the goals you have added in Delve. Which is so great with that tool is it will send you weekly reports on how you performed. And depending your performance, you can edit your goals. The good thing with that is that value is only to be seen for you. Many people were scared in the beginning, like, okay, if I'm non-productive for 40 hours from the 40, and if my manager can see it, what then? The thing is, your manager will never see your personal details. He can definitely ask for a print screen and you have to send it over to him, but by default, none can see your personal details on Delve. My understanding was from Microsoft that we will also get a team analytic and not only a my analytic. And if people are working across the world on a project, like you have a team in Singapore and you have a team in New York, another one in Brussels, and they're all communicating with together, like meetings and emails, etc., etc., you could even see the details of each team collaborating with each other. So if you have an issue between the team in New York and the team in Brussels, because you can see that the focus hour was always like 10 hours and that week it's only 2 hours, you can contact that team and say like, hey guys, is there any issue? And maybe being proactive enough to interact with those teams. So cool, so performant, and so many data that you can get from my analytics. Another one is the Power Apps. I'm loving Power Apps. It's so cool. You can build any intelligent app on top of SharePoint. Even outside of SharePoint, you can build a standalone Power App and use a SharePoint list as a data source, or simply you can build on top of a SharePoint list your app and integrate that app in a SharePoint page. How cool is that? Like your vacation, like car rental, like you want to have a system where people can just write their address, location, and with the Bing services, you can get the exact location on a Bing map and they can just print it out. You can build a lot of applications with Power Apps. And this is my code, and I'm always saying like data from any source, preferred from SharePoint. Any data with Power Apps is an intelligent SharePoint, because whenever you connect a data coming from CRM, SharePoint, XYZ, anything, and you build your application on top of that and integrate that app into SharePoint, you can make your SharePoint very intelligent. Because people will use your SharePoint site and they will not even be aware that they have Power Apps in it. They will use SharePoint, you embed your Power Apps, and you integrate with data in or out of Office 365. So cool, so productive, because people will use and interact with data from anywhere in SharePoint. The fifth one is Delve. Delve will discover content across stacks, different stacks in Office 365, from Exchange to OneDrive to SharePoint to Yammer. And it will not only aggregate data and show that data to you, but it will look for relevant data and give that data for you. As you can see on my screen, you have the people that you're working with, and you will see data and documents and PDF files, etc., which are relevant for you on your screen. Again, I love Delve, but one of my bad things that I mentioned in Office 365 is, did we hear anything new on Delve since ages? Like, this is so cool. This is so productive for you. Like, if your manager modifies a very important document for you and mentions you, the AI behind Delph would bring that document for you on top, because he knows the manager modified the document, that document is important, tag it as important, you are mentioned, and boom, that document should be on the first place in Delph. The potential intelligence behind Delph is marvelous. But as it stands today, we have not that much information about the roadmap and new functionalities coming for Delph. But yet, still, I love it. Having that kind of intelligent, relevant information based on interaction and activities between my manager and me, my colleagues and me, is so great. Really, really great. Another one is Stream, Microsoft Stream. One of my preferred tools today to build facts, frequent asked questions. If you ask anybody from the SharePoint world, from the SharePoint era, from Exchange, from Skype, they would say FAQ is actually a set of documents where people can just search for words and they would know how to use it, how to install it, or how to manipulate it. But today, video is the new king. And I'm proposing to my customers on a greenfield project to build their facts, their how-tos, their technical videos, their trainings, the recording of meetings, classes, and many, many other into Stream. So you could actually have a FAQ build on Stream where people can just search for keywords and they could come onto the video and watch it home, on train, on the airplane. And it's much more easier to understand things with video than reading endless papers. Another big advantage of Stream is that now you can search for words into videos. As you can see on my screen, I'm searching for the word scalable, and Stream is actually finding every scalable word in my video, and you can see the time frame is always changing. So if I'm searching for how to create a SharePoint list in my stream, it can just go on be the 10 seconds. I hit on the 10 second and my video would go on the 10 second, and then I can see how to create a SharePoint list. Productivity raised by just using Microsoft Stream. So cool. You can search for text in videos, you can have multilingual videos, and please build, as I mentioned here, how-tos, technical videos, trainings, meetings, classes, and many other into Stream. And most important, you can embed those videos and guidelines in a SharePoint site or Microsoft Teams. Number 7, give them the choice. Always give them the choice. As an administrator, as a global admin, as a SharePoint admin, there is always place for everything. And there is a wonderful image from ScienceSoft. You can see, like, for the business applications, you have Power Apps, Flow, Forms. For task and project, Planner, Task, Project Online, To Do. Like, you always have more than one. Even that image is not accurate because search has now, the new search, my analytics, etc., etc. You can perform a lot. So give them the choice. Let them be productive. If the guy wants to use SharePoint Online, okay, use it. You want to use Microsoft Team and embed SharePoint in a team, just go for it. You want to use Yammer Webpack for conversations, be my guest, do it. Let people use what they want to use for being productive. If my work is done, I do really not care about what tool they use. That's the message that you have to give to your businesses. Introducing bots, also one of the things that I'm mentioning and I'm asking as a favor to customers to use is bots. You have a lot of bots in the store, in the team store, as an example, as they were launched in March 2017. You can talk to bots, you can ask them questions because some of them has intelligence behind that, and it's not only a nest of loops from if. No, it has some intelligence, and I've known a bot which was called Zoom.ai. um, that bot could talk to you and give you responses, really clever responses, like when is my next meeting, and he could go into your calendar, grab your meeting and give you all the information. Or if I had a meeting with an unknown partner, I could even ask to Zoom.ai, hey, please tell me more about Jack Nicholson. And Zoom.ai would go to Google, check information about Jack Nicholson, and bring me all the information about that. Productivity raised up just by using out of the box free bots in Teams. Try to use it. Don't be scared about hybrid models. This is also something that I mentioned in Office 365. We we are from the SharePoint world, but you also have people from Exchange, from Skype, from Link. We love our features, like in the online you have in the on-premises you have a lot of tools that maybe are not available in Office 365. And today's world, today's era is not about SharePoint or Office 365, it is SharePoint and Office 365. If you want to use Delve, be my guest. I will build the bridge and you will use Delve. You want to use the fast site collection creation in on-premises, be my guest. I will build for you. Use it. It's not a or, but it's more likely an and scenario. The last but not the least for being productive is monitoring. It's extremely important to monitor because you can build stuff, but you need to know and have interaction with your users to know if they're doing stuff well. The first thing I can give you as an example is the System Center Operations Suite in the cloud. You can get logs, configuration data, backup information, monitoring activities, and availability. You can build your digital workplace in Office 365 and check how it goes with SCOM in online. Another one is a secure score. It's an automated scan of your tenant for free, which will give you guidelines about user management, such as multi-factor authentication, password reset, which will give you all best practices that you can implement in Office 365. It is not meant to have the highest score, because as you can see on my image, I have a 25 on 301 and a almost 700 on 900 on Windows. It is not mentioned to have the highest score, but it is mentioned to have the best score for your tenant. The bad thing with that is that there's no automatic fix. You can't assign any task such as enable multi-factor authentication or having less than 10 global or 5 global admins. You can't assign that. And the runtime can take up to 48 hours. And for Windows, you need a license, which is Defender ATP. This one I'm going to skip because we all know that implementing policies for groups, like if my group is not being used for 90 days, please remove it. That's quite straightforward. And you have the Cloud App Discovery, which is also so cool because you can monitor activities and monitor accounts. If a user tells you like, hey, I can't access outside of the network perimeter my SharePoint, well, you can see everything that the guy is doing. Like an example here, Gokan Ozfici logged on the Microsoft Cloud from that IP address, from that location, from that device on that time. And what he did do is deleting messages from deleted items folder on that time, again, from that location on that app. The good thing with that is he will also show you things that are not your users, like this one, apps at SharePoint. From that point, I can know that the SharePoint team has made some modifications on SharePoint and they have been changing maybe adding some features or removing some features. You can monitor everything, and you have a lot of tools to control Office 365 and improve productivity, like multi-factor authentication, data loss prevention, built-in mobile device management, Intune, antivirus, anti-spam. It's not a security or admin session, so I'm going to just skip, but at least you can know and see that you have a lot of tools to improve productivity in Office 365. Oh, too fast. So the conclusion, the final slides is the wonderful quote of Albert Einstein: "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." Right? You need to evolve, you need to change. And what we did before was this one. You have multiple audiences, like the individual audience, the group, a team audience, a department audience, and the organizational part. And you have different priorities of communication. You have the low communication to the high and urgent communication. And what we said before is, from an individual perspective, if the communication is on a low, is a low priority, then use OneDrive for Business. Then we said, if the communication is getting priority, but not that much, from an individual perspective, use Outlook. For all group, team, and department, use the modern team sites. Then what we said is, from an organizational perspective, for low communication, use the intranet or the Microsoft Stream. You could also use publishing sites or Delve boards. If the communication is getting urgent, then for the group, team, and department, use Microsoft Teams with bots and connectors. You can have the persistent chat or even make conversations one-to-one or one-to-many, right? Then, from an organizational perspective, if the communication is urgent, you can use Yammer. The last but not least, if the communication is extremely urgent, like you have to communicate now, today, it's still Skype for Business online meeting, or the Skype broadcast on top of it. With all that being said, you will see that all of them will be linked to an analytics. That's what I mentioned earlier, like the team analytics and the workplace analytics are still not released, but I really hope we will get soon enough more information about that. Today, we only have the My Analytics available for us. So what we did do is, using that kind of information architecture, the user scenarios of tools in Office 365. So this, and when I apply the Albert Einstein ideology, philosophy quote on top of that, we come on this. We created them, now it's time to evolve. You have the inner loop, the outer loop. Like the inner loop is how you communicate with your project team, with how you communicate with your personnel, and the outer loop is whenever you want to make a big communication, like the CEO wants to make a big announcement and uses Yammer, right? You use Yammer for big communications, and Teams for projects, for little teams, etc., etc. So we evolved. It's not anymore that kind of user scenarios we have, but we have to evolve to that kind of scenarios. All that being said, you have to measure it. You have to measure how good you are. Because with all that things I've said to you, you never know how actually good your users are. You don't know who is your champion in Yammer. You don't know who did what in a SharePoint site. So please join me to listen Melissa for a 15-minute demonstration on how you can measure Office 365 if you're productive or not. Melissa?
Yes, thanks so much, Gokan. Just making myself the presenter. Okay, and everyone can see my screen fine. So I'll just go ahead and do a quick demo. So I'll start off with CardioLog Analytics. This is our SaaS version. We also have an on-prem solution. So the first thing you can see over here is the portal hierarchy or tree structure. And we can see that we're tracking a SharePoint Online tenant and a SharePoint 2013 tenant at the same time. And I can drill down into either of these to see lists and subsites like we see here. So for example, if you're going through a migration, this is a great way to drill down into various aspects of each of your farms or tenants to track what's going on during each stage of the process. And you'll see that I can select any object or team site and see how the information is dynamic. So you can filter by a specific area within SharePoint. So if I click on SharePoint 2013, now we will only see the information for SharePoint 2013. So one of the categories that we track right here is content. And here I have a list of the most popular items in SharePoint. And here we can really focus on what actions we can take. So for example, once you know what's the most popular, you can link to that on your SharePoint homepage to save people time searching for these most popular items. And now let's flip that around. And now we're showing all the inactive content. So it's all the content not being used. And maybe we'll find out that our brand new HR site isn't being accessed because no one knows about it. So we need to make it more visible to our users. And we can contact the site owners of the HR site to tell them to take action with this unused content. And we can also see content based on size that shows some of these content pieces are actually pretty large and taking up a lot of space in our portal. So I can prioritize how to tackle this unused content and contact the owners of large content first and tell them, hey, you have 60 days to get rid of this, take action to improve it, or I'm going to get rid of this content. Or if we see there's important content here that's not being read, let's find a way to make it more visible to users, like by linking it to a home page. Now, let's move on to adoption. So here we can see our users are divided by department, but we can also split them up by country or any other property from the Azure directory. And if we hover here, we can see the number of active users and the average duration of time spent in the portal for each department. And this is where we can really take action. So if we see, for example, that marketing has the highest number of inactive users, we know we want to focus our training here. Another piece of insight we can take from this report is that although marketing is not very active, there may be some people within marketing who are very active and some who are not. So if I just click on marketing, now I can see the actual people in marketing and how often they use SharePoint. So instead of giving everyone in marketing training, we can really focus on training only the people in marketing who need that extra assistance. And as I said earlier, our dashboards are dynamic. So I can simply click on marketing to see what content the marketing department is viewing and what they're searching for. And this is a great way to take action for each group based on what they're interested in. And lastly, we'll go over search. So with search, we can see the top search phrases, and we also have at the top successful versus failed search for each term. So I can click on any term, and then I'll see the fail and success rate of that term. And if you see a popular search term has a lot of failed searches, you can create more content for that term, link content about it to the homepage, or improve your search schemas. I can also see which departments are searching for that content the most, and then link that content to the group sites because I know what they're searching for and what they're interested in. And for all of these categories, content, adoption, search, and others, we can provide even more data and allow you to drill down more to see how you can really optimize your portal. And then the second piece is the engagement. So I'll show you a quick demo of CardioLog Engage, because now that we have all this data from our analytics, what can we do to leverage it? So as an example, we found out that our new HR site is not being accessed. So we can create a campaign here and actually promote that site. So I'll choose the goal, promote a page. And there are going to be a few steps to create these campaigns. So step 1 is going to be the audience. Who do you want to engage with inside the organization? It could be everyone in the company, or if in the data we found out that our sales team is not very active, we can create a campaign for just the sales team. And you can tell them that they have access to SharePoint, and if you're launching Teams, let's tell everyone from sales about the Teams platform. Or you can target only the sales users who are inactive and who didn't visit SharePoint in the past 30 days. So that's the audience, who you want to connect with. The next step is how do you want to engage with them? You can show them a pop-up right on the page and ask them for feedback. What's missing for you? How can we improve? The header and footer are great to tell them about new content. For example, check out the new HR site. But for people who don't usually access things like SharePoint, they won't see any of these pop-ups. So for them, maybe a quick email. It could be a very targeted email to salespeople who are inactive, or if they are out in the field all day visiting with customers, maybe a quick text message. And we can include a link back to that new content in SharePoint. So step 1, in the data, I found out that the sales team isn't very active within SharePoint, as an example. And now step 2, I'm going to drive adoption by actually interacting with those orphaned users. And now we can design our campaign. So what do you think about the new HR site? And there are many calls to action to choose from, whether it's a button, a rating, or an open question where they can write in their feedback. So the idea is that we can really get a lot more data from the users besides just the analytics, where again, the goal is to get that feedback and create a better intranet for our users. And another example would be traditional emails that we typically send employees. So instead of sending them an email, inviting them to an event, simply send a quick pop-up on the SharePoint page. And the last step is going to be the trigger. So you can schedule your campaign to go out at a specific time and day, or you can trigger it based on the user's interaction with SharePoint. So for example, if the user is scrolling down a specific page, or if they're viewing a specific page, like the search results page, for more than 60 seconds, that's when the pop-up will appear. Because if someone is viewing results for such a long time, they're probably not able to find what they're looking for. So then the pop-up will appear asking, what are you struggling to find? By asking the right question at the right time, you will get the best feedback. So by reviewing and understanding the data provided by CardioLog Analytics, you can really use CardioLog Engage to leverage this data and interact more effectively with your users. And now I'll just quickly switch back to our presentation. So thanks again to everyone for joining the webinar today. And as a thanks to everyone who joined our webinar, Gokan and I would like to invite you to email info@intlock.com after the webinar ends to get a free one-on-one evaluation session with CardioLog Analytics and Gokan, so you can learn more about collaboration and productivity in Office 365, learn how to boost your SharePoint and Office 365 adoption, learn how to increase engagement with your intranet, and more. And I'd also like to thank Gokan for joining our webinar today. We do still have a minute or two if you want to go ahead and maybe answer one or two questions, Gokan.
Yeah, for sure. Can I see the questions?
Yes, it should just be in the questions underneath attendees, polls, questions.
So there is, I can see them.
No, I can tell you one question
Yeah,
someone
please.
asked. Oh, yeah. So someone says, what is Microsoft Graph?
So the graph is actually a developer endpoint, which helps developers on building applications and extracting data from the graph. So if you want to have the permissions of a specific user on a specific site and build an application on top of that, well, you can use the graph to get the data, the brute data, and build application. So it's an endpoint for developers, actually, the graph.
Okay. And it seems like most of the other questions are comments. One person asked if we could share the slides afterwards. Is that all right with you, Gokan?
Yeah, it's so wonderful. You can share them.
Okay, perfect. So after the webinar today, we'll be sending out a recording to everyone that registered as well as the slides. So if you missed the beginning, you'll be able to see the full webinar. And that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks so much to Gokan and to everyone that joined the webinar. And have a great day.